So for our keynote this year, we're going to do something a little different. Just as technology is changing, so is the format of our keynote conversation today. The internet was one of the most disruptive forces in the music industry in over a generation. And I now believe that we are in the middle of the next great disruption, and that is the movement to consumer access on mobile phones of content. Our first keynote guest represents one of the most exciting areas of growth in this emerging partnership between the music industry and the wireless industry. Dan Hesse is the CEO of Sprint, one of the largest communication companies with a big footprint in music. Beyond corporate sponsorships of NBC's The Voice, as well as many music festivals and concert tours, Sprint recently partnered with Spotify to bring a music subscription service to Sprint customers. Dan was appointed by the President to the National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee and serves on the National Board of Governors of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. Please join me in welcoming Dan Hesse with us tonight. Also joining us is a personal friend of mine, Meredith Baker, former FCC Commissioner and currently the new President and CEO of CTIA, the Wireless Association. Meredith also brings with her a wealth of experience from previous work with Comcast, NBC Universal, and high-ranking positions with the Department of Commerce and the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. Please also join me in welcoming Meredith Baker. This feels very comfortable. So, at NMPA, it's a big focus of ours to make music accessible. And we see this dramatic shift of mobile entertainment as a positive step. And we know that telecom companies such as yours, Dan, are increasingly offering streaming as part of the plans. And so perhaps we could start this conversation with your initial thoughts for both of you as to how you see this emerging partnership between the music industry and your industry.
Well, I think that the biggest opportunity for us is because, especially the young generation, that is how they consume music, it's how they listen to music. I have two teenage boys, and they listen to music from no other source but their cell phone. I mean, when I'm yelling and can't hear one of the boys, I look for them, and they're walking around with their cell phone with a set of headphones on. But music's been kept, it's kind of in a 2G time warp in mobile in terms of quality. When 2G came out, I actually started in wireless 17 years ago, and it was just when analog was moving to digital. Analog was 1G, digital 2G, and it's very similar to the conversion of kind of records to compact discs. And what's happened in that period of time is everything's gotten better. Surfing's gotten faster, video's gotten better, new smartphones have 1080p full HD screens, texting is better, voice quality, everything is much better except music. They're highly compressed MP3 files. Streaming services are highly compressed as well. And for our industry brand and for the Sprint brand, what we want to do is, in addition to making music more accessible through partnerships with streaming service companies like Spotify, which pays music publishing royalties every time something's listened to, so they're a terrific partner. Is how do we increase and improve the mobile experience? So we actually partnered with Harman Kardon and HTC and Qualcomm and Spotify about a month ago to bring out really the first great music device, because in terms of a mobile phone, because that is where music is going, and there's no reason why it can't also sound great, because I think it's going to be great for the business model and for our industry to have great sounding music on mobile devices. So, and by the way, the reason, very briefly, that music doesn't sound so great on mobile devices is, of course, 2G networks. They weren't very big. You couldn't stream faster service. Now we're in 4G. Memory was very precious. So a song, you wanted it highly compressed because there wasn't a whole lot of room on the memory. This new device with an SD card has 160 gigabytes of memory. You got 4G. So we put in a mobile phone is, not to get too technical, but a 24-bit, 192 kilohertz bit rate DAC. So it can play these FLAC, these lossless, really high-resolution files. But also what Harman Kardon has worked very hard on is these algorithms, which take psychoacoustics as well as very sophisticated data algorithms. And they take, whether it's Spotify, and this is why Spotify did the deal so fast and was so eager to do this, makes it sound so much better. Same with an MP3, very sophisticated, so it sounds greater, because I want my sons to have a great audio experience like I did when I was their age. I mean, that was part of it. When I was their age, I was a record nut, a stereo nut. My father came back from the Vietnam War in the mid-'60s with these separates. Back then, everybody had hi-fis, and he reel-to-reel and big amp and big speakers. And I mean, I couldn't wait to get the new record to put it on the table because it just sounded so great, and the experience was part of the enjoyment. And I think we can do that now in mobile. So I think we're obviously the Apple acquisition of Beats is interesting because we're moving. Downloads are very important, but I think streaming is growing at a much faster rate. So our industry will be at the center of music consumption. And what I want to do, and I think what will really help the industry as well as help our brands, is make it a really enjoyable experience so that we have a real focus on fidelity, and we're really excited about it.
So Meredith, you've been on the job now less than 2 weeks, but you're immediately confronted with a lot of issues about, on a policy level, how your industry will be able to work with content industries. Maybe you could offer some of your initial thoughts with all of your 2 weeks of experience in this particular job, although she is an expert in these issues, but tell us about your thoughts about this emerging partnership between content and more specifically music and your industry.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I feel very privileged to be here. It is, I'm sitting between a music nut, and I think you described yourself as a freak. So I'm between my two friends, Dan and David, a nut and a freak. So I couldn't be any happier to be here. Truthfully, as one of my, as my first, speaking engagement outside of Washington, I thought that this would be perfect because it's a nice transition because, as David mentioned, I came from a content company. And we were trying to use the different platforms to push our content to our consumers in multiple different ways. But then, you have this business people that tell you have to monetize it. So that becomes sometimes a little hard and it's challenging because the truth is we're here to talk about music, which is so cool, very cool. But we could be talking about health or education or energy or payment processing. The truth is that mobility is really transformative, and transformative is disruptive, and disruptive is both very exciting because all of the new opportunities in the future as well as scary. And now I represent the wireless industry, which really is the platform that is giving you all of this future opportunity. So I think that this is perfect to be here. I think building on what Dan said, part of what is so great about this is that we have now a 93% penetration of cell phones in the United States. So that means that there's a lot of competition, and that means that there's a lot of different providers that are doing a lot of different things. So, you have this fantastic sound quality in partnership with Spotify. You see what AT&T is doing with Beats. I think we've got a T-Mobile decision kind of announcement that's going to come out on the 18th. We all expect that's going to be music.
Do you want to make news here?
No, I
share
can't.
That now?
I don't know that, so I can't. We're all speculating. I imagine
worth a try.
Everybody is here too. The truth is, so it's one of the innovative platforms that people are really competing on in the wireless industry, and that's great. And truthfully, it's because of the infrastructure build out. It's because of the $34 billion that the wireless companies are investing in the infrastructure that is providing these robust networks that are actually able to carry this fantastic, experience to the consumer. I was, much to Brad's chagrin on the train up here, I was reading Vanity Fair. And I got past the cover story on Mad Men, but then what I was really reading about was the Apple-Samsung story. And it's really fascinating that Steve Jobs was insistent that he was not going to bring the iPhone to the consumer until we had better networks and we had better phones. And now that we do have phones that can, launch a lunar module, and you have this fantastic infrastructure, you have the OSS operating systems that is modern and can do it, and then you have the apps that put it all together. It really leads to a time when the music industry and the rest of our society and uses are really just at the very beginning as fantastic experiences.
So Dan, one of my core beliefs is that the music industry isn't going to do a lot to change the behavior of consumers with regard to how they want to access music. But one of the criticisms that our industry has is that as people move from ownership models to streaming models, that the compensation seems to be going down, 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 but yet some of us hope that as you get more penetration of streaming models, that actually can make up and you could actually do better. Tell us a little bit about this partnership that you have with Spotify and what your hope is with regard to penetration, because while our rates may be good, if the revenue pool isn't very deep, then it doesn't really matter, and you're not going to replace people buying physical products with the same kind of revenue streams unless you get the kind of mass adoption. And one of the challenges has been selling consumers on the idea of actually paying for a music subscription service. But what you're doing is so interesting and encouraging to me, because by bundling it, you maybe have an ability to tap into that market where, as you mentioned, almost every American now has a smartphone.
So if you can get the customers to pay for the service, so Spotify, like a number of other services, but we think Spotify is the best. Typically have a free model, and then you have a subscription model. And the average revenue per year for subscribing customers is about $120 a year, which is the equivalent of downloading 10 digital albums per year. So I think we all want to get as many customers as possible on the paying model. And for a company like Spotify, and again, I haven't gone through their private company, and I haven't gone through their financials, but reportedly still aren't making money yet. And it's really an issue of scale. So what we want to do is help Spotify scale so that it can make money and get a lot of paying customers. So what we have going with them is if a new customer signs up for Sprint, all our customers get 3 months of Spotify Premium for free. That's the subscription service, which is a much more robust service than the free service, because we want to addict them to the premium service so they stay on as paying customers. And then if you buy the family plan, it's 6 months free and then a discounted rate. So what we're trying to do is help Spotify increase its number of paying customers, and we have every incentive to do that. And if we scale that, there's a lot more revenue that's going to come into the system, and I think that's a good thing. So we're really trying to move towards subscription services. One of the other benefits of subscription services and streaming is what we've seen as they've grown, we see piracy go down. We've seen in the last 5 years, if we look at internet traffic, the amount of internet traffic that basically went to file sharing, which is quite frankly piracy, has dropped from about 31% to less than 10%. So you have a 2/3 drop in what we see as piracy on the internet as these services, and I know that's the downside of it becoming more, we'll call it more economical. There's less of an incentive to steal it. But if we can move people up the value chain, and that's the whole idea of their free service, is to get them on free and get them up to premium, we think it accelerates it, is to give them the premium for free so they experience that great Spotify premium experience, and then hopefully they'll continue. Because really what we see music changing to one of the great thing about the streaming services is really discovery. Discovery is made so easy. And music sharing. In this world of social media, people care about either who they idolize or follow, or their friends, or what they're listening to, and it makes that very easy, which I think is viral. That's one of the benefits, I think, for the music industry in terms of what we're doing in terms of this model, streaming model and wireless, is when things become viral, you have just so much more distribution, and things can become larger much faster. So I think there's a lot of plus ahead of us, a lot of benefits ahead of us in terms of the new model.
Dan, you've been known as being kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of these things with regard to your industry. Do you see a time where you and your competitors are actually pitching to consumers why your music service is better than the others, and that's a reason to join your plans?
Already started that. I mean, Spotify is better, and we provide it free, and actually the devices that the Harman Kardon edition of the HTC, it's going to sound a lot better on Sprint. So not only will your streaming service Spotify sound better, your MP3 libraries will sound better. It's the only mobile phone out there where you can actually download, if you will, high resolution FLAC files and enjoy that. We throw in a premium set of earbuds in the phone, which normally retail for $150 versus typically the throwaways that come in other phones. So the experience is a lot better. So we already have moved into using music as a differentiator. And the Boy Genius report said, Sprint is the company for music lovers. And so that's what we want to get out there for our brand. So I think it will become a competitive dynamic. And as Meredith mentioned, it's not like our competitors are standing still. AT&T's done its thing with Beats. We don't know what T-Mobile or Verizon are going to do, but they're, pardon?
I think Verizon has Slacker. It's more of a download.
But they're, the thing is, it's keeping up with the Joneses to a certain extent. So if we take the lead, like we did in certain areas, but like green in the environment, others will follow.
And there's a sign-up booth for Sprint outside the door for the music lovers. I think what we've seen, David, in we saw it first with XM Sirius, so you would know that better than I would. But in '01, when XM Sirius introduced the bundle, that's really what we started to see. And in music, what we see is 3/4 of those who have a bundle listen to music, particularly skewing elderly, actually. But 50%, less than 50% of those who don't have a bundle listen to music. So I think in the streaming world, I think. For me, I look at it just as the consumer, and I say, some people say streaming is the end of buying. Every time I stream something, I go and buy it. So not every part of it, but there's always a discovery that I end up purchasing. So I think we're just at the beginning of, I think, this really exciting part. You mentioned the smartphones. I don't think I said this, but I might have, who knows. Right now, 60% of Americans have smartphones. But of the new models that are coming out, 90% of the phones that are coming out are smartphones. So we still are just at the beginning of this ecosystem. So we're right at the beginning to see where all this competition is going to drive us, and it's really exciting, I think, particularly for the music industry.
I know one of the challenges that you have is that the music industry lives by these archaic, crazy rules, where a music service has to try to fit itself into a category in order to be licensed in an easy way. And so partnering with someone like a Spotify that's already navigated that makes a lot of sense, but you may have a future where you may want to develop your own products as well. And so one of the things that we're working on is trying to break down these walls so that it doesn't matter whether the service involves making reproductions or whether it's a public performance or whether it actually has video with it or if lyrics are displayed. It's simply a licensing exercise between the songwriters and music publishers who own the content and a licensee who wants to do something innovative. Now, I know you tackled some of these issues at the FCC. Now that you're new to CTIA, one of the things that's going to be interesting is that for the first time ever in our last rate proceeding, CTIA filed as a party. They wanted to be involved in setting the rules of what the Section 115 mechanical rates would look like. And so being new to the job, what other types of policy hurdles do you see from Washington that might make it easier to have more innovation for the types of things that your companies want to do?
Well, I didn't think you were going to ask that, but spectrum. I mean, I think all of these innovations, is video, your YouTube video that you're downloading so that we can find the next great voice participant, all of that requires spectrum. And every year, we think that the data use is going to maybe, we don't, but we hear those naysayers, it's going to level off. And every year, we just had reports from Ericsson. This week, we had Cisco. Next week, on Tuesday, we'll see our CTIA annual survey, and you'll just see that the data usage just keeps increasing. You can speak to that, Dan, on your own network. So I think that the biggest Washington policy for us is to be able to allow you to continue to innovate, is to give us the spectrum to give you the platform to do so.
Dan, one of the reasons why I wanted you to be here today is not just because of what you're doing with this partnership, but also because you've decided to take your company in a way of very closely associating yourself with the music industry. And so as I mentioned before, you were the sponsor of The Voice, and I know you're a fan of Christina Grimmie, who's going to perform later, and you're excited about that. You also have been a sponsor of festivals and concert tours, and you're legendary among your staff for wanting to talk about music. Is this something where you were just a fan and you brought your company to this space, or do you actually see this being something that's a good partnership beyond just the subscription plan, but actually associating your brand with songwriters and with music?
Yeah, actually, as part of the announcement when we announced this device, this HTC Harman Kardon device a few weeks ago, is we announced Sprint Sound Sessions and other capabilities that really help to brand the company. What's called Sprint Live, which is an immersive experience on your device where you have these tiles and you constantly get all sorts of music news, music industry news to begin to align our brand more. I do get grief. If you went into a Sprint store a week ago Saturday and you hated the music in the store, all my fault. The head of sales said, they knew I was such a music fan. Would you share your Spotify playlist with us? So it played in all of our retail stores all day a week ago Saturday. But it's also a way that people get to know you. They get, that's one of the great things about, I think, about streaming services, is this ability to share. And unlike downloads, where you actually have to buy it, in that service you can share and they can listen to it. And if they really like it, they can still download it and buy it if they want to buy the copy. So broadly, we are aligning our brand with music through Sound Sessions, Sprint Live, through this device, the first device, if you will, that's truly an audiophile phone, and there's going to be more to come.
That's great. Well, maybe I can close with giving you an opportunity to say anything else you'd like to say, but include in that maybe some of the stuff that you're listening to now, maybe some of the things that you're enjoying.
Brother. Oh, you put me on the spot. Well, my playlist, and actually it was great. I saw and actually got to meet them last week. Weezer in concert. They played at Bottle Rock out in California, which we sponsored. So that's why I got to meet them. That's people, by the way, internally they think that's why we sponsor all these things, because it means Dan gets to meet the talent, and it's partially true actually. But Beck has a new album. I'm a big fan of Beck. Wye Oak has a great new album. I still like a particular genre, Jesus and Mary Chain, and Brian Jonestown Massacre, Dandy Warhol's, that kind of genre music. Actually, just this week, Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page remastered, and they're out in high def, so high HD tracks. So this is, by the way, one of the great things about high resolution is the albums I like, every time it comes out sounding better, I completely rebuy it in that. So you buy, when good vinyl comes out, you buy it that way. When they come out in high res, you buy it again. So anyway, that's a little bit about what I listen to. It's pretty eclectic music tastes, or taste, because I've loved music for a long time. I would just leave one final message. I know, and Daniel Ek, who's another music lover who runs Spotify, as well as Dinesh Palwal, the CEO of Harman, and Peter Chow, the CEO of HTC. We're all music fans, and we all know that without the writers, we would have no industry. And so we appreciate what you do, and we will work very hard to make sure that you're adequately compensated, paid. We want to do this. Now, the issue for companies like Spotify is they're still not making money. So we have to figure out how to really increase the size of the pie. And I believe that a really great audio experience, just like people will pay more for a theater ticket, in the front row versus the back, in 3D or on IMAX, or with nice big seats versus not so great, I think that people will pay more if the quality is greater, and they are moving mobile. So I'm committed to making the mobile experience a phenomenal experience. And with today's technology, memory, speed of networks, digital analog converters, and what have you that you can put in these mobile phones, customers have always had to make compromises to be mobile. That's no longer the case. Compromise isn't necessary anymore. And again, as the father of 2 teenage boys who want them to love music as much as I do, I'm committed to the missionary work, really, of bringing high fidelity to the mobile world.
Well, to the extent music is going to be a differentiator between the companies, I have a feeling that you have quite a leg up with the passion that you have for the subject. How about you, Meredith? What are you listening to these days?
Well, I was going to say, once you have the right note, you probably should end your session, because that was really well stated. And I think we look forward to supporting and working with your industry as we go forward. David knows I have an unabiding and unabashed crush on George Strait, so we did. I am reliving that concert from this weekend over and over again. I have a slightly eclectic taste as well. I might or might not admit to having a lot of Katy Perry on my iPod. I run. We have to do those things. Like I said, I'm a buyer of music. I'm a buyer of music, so that's usually where I sample. And I'm probably revealing too much here. I have an imaginary best friend in Natalie Morales. She and I are Fitbit buddies. So, and she introduced me to Imaginary Dragons. So that is my latest download, I'd say.
Well, this may be telling too much also, but when I was on the way to the National Association of Broadcasters convention a few months ago, I ran into Meredith on the plane, and she asked me what I was doing that night, and I said, well, I'm going to the Academy of Country Music Awards. And what are you doing? And she said, oh, I have all these meetings. I said, well, you know, I could probably get you a ticket. And so she blew off all of her meetings, and she came
That was in my previous job,
to the
Dan.
Academy
It was
of
my
Country
previous
Music Awards
job.
with me. So I know that she's a real fan. Please join me in thanking Dan and Meredith for being here.
Nice job.